All right, week 35. Recap from the workshop, April 19th, 2026. So 28 attendees this time. We are averaging somewhere between 25 and 40. We'll see how it keeps growing. We were outside again, which again, Texas, man, is so unreliable. The week before it rained on us a little bit. This week it started to get hot, and the mosquitoes have re-arrived back in Austin. Nice for the mosquitoes returning like the swallows every year. So we have to deal with that. We'll figure it out. In the career half hour, 20 minutes, we talked about prepping for stand-up industry verticals. So trying to get your show together now so that you can match up to a market that might pay you well once you get your material together and get enough seasoning that you feel like you can handle that vertical. For example, we talked quite a bit about cruise ships, how in 2023, after not really doing stand-up hardly at all for 6 or 7 years, after the pandemic, I had some space, and so I decided to just try to get back into it through cruise ships. Called a friend of mine and who worked cruise ships a lot. He hooked me up with a booker and gave me a recommendation, and I sent the guy a 7-minute set. He hired me, and not long after that, I'm suddenly stepping onto a huge boat off the coast of Brazil to do my first gig, which is really interesting in some ways because the industry is so hard. It's so hard to get work. There's so many people competing for it. And then you realize once you've set something up well and you've got all the things in your favor of cruise ships have a lot of work. They're always looking for new comics. My friend was very well respected, and I've known him for probably 20 years, and so he helped me get right in. He vouched for me, made a huge difference. I had a decent 7-minute set that was clean and ready to go, and so that was enough. The guy said he only watched 2 minutes of it, which is crazy if you think about it, that you pick up a potentially 6-figure gig every year off 2 minutes of video. But it was all nicely set up, and so it worked. And I did over 30 weeks that year. I think I did 34 weeks fully traveling. They pay $3,500 a week, which is much better than land comedy clubs for just regular acts. And it's odd and it's fun. You're in amazing places. It's got its downsides too. Not my long-term interest, but it was a great year. I had a lot of fun doing that. Very interesting to travel around and do 1,000-seat theaters, which I'd never done. In some ways, I'm not a great cruise show act because my show is pretty much all talk and ideas. I make my living on cleverness and ideas other people haven't thought about yet. And big rooms like that, and sort of older audiences and cross-cultural audiences, and very, very non-comedy oriented audiences. A lot of them have never even been to a stand-up show. They just go because it's free on the boat to go. So they need things like big visuals. They need you to be a big character, and they need you to act, and the jokes need to be fairly simple so that they can all get them. I realized my show was very American, and for a lot of the cruises, that doesn't work very well. So I finished that and moved back into doing things on land. Then we talked a little bit about teaching stand-up, which is also a vertical. Like a lot of people move in to try teaching other people who are trying to come up under, in the beginning areas of whatever professional entertainment you're doing. And that can be acting, how to get into sitcoms, how to do films, how to host, how to produce shows. All that stuff is people sort of take shots at teaching entertainment, which I get because it can be scammy and it can under-deliver. But when it's done well, it's a really nice speed way to learn a lot and to get into the industry quickly. And that's one of the reasons why I teach the workshop for free, because I know people are trying to just figure a lot of things out. And I don't like to make money off people who aren't making money. If you're making money, I'm going to make money off you if I work with you. And that's why I said I still do one-on-ones with comics, sometimes because I think they have potential and I really like their material and the character that they have to work with. But other people pay me, and it gets expensive very quickly because I charge a minimum of $300 an hour, up to $500 an hour. because we're generating original material very quickly. And you own all the material when I work with you. So you get into this whole thing where you have to kind of deep think about the comic. You have to really, if you're going to really deliver material that works, you have to really invest in it as the writer and the coach. So I interview people and I harvest material from them. Then we start to really work on the development cycles to turn into A-level stand-up. That's the only reason to ever pay for material or help, is if you're getting A or A+ level stuff that you can't get on your own, at least not, you can't get a big bulk of it at speed, which is what you need. So I do some of that, and I don't know, mostly I'm doing it right now for people, like I said, that I think have future potential, because it's kind of fun. And it's very draining to do one-on-one stuff, so I'd rather it be fun. That's essentially why Hollywood studios and production companies are essentially just big banks as part of what they have to offer, because they have to pre-finance the build of their shows before those shows make any money. A lot of times they have a guaranteed slot. They know they can make money with it, but if the show is bad or isn't liked, they're not going to make money. On the other hand, if it's well liked, they can make money for decades. Take a look at things like Seinfeld. So when it works really well, but they have to pre-finance the builds. And most businesses, you have to pre-finance what you're doing, what you're going to be selling. It's just stand-ups don't think of it that way. So investing upfront in buying material or developing your skills or taking more courses from really good people, a business has to do that. It has to have good product when it launches. Stand-ups tend to launch and then build their product as they go. And hopefully it gets good enough at some point that really rockets you forward. But I'm not sure that's the best business theory sometimes. I get it, because most people launch into stand-up because they don't want to do other types of work, or they've, chosen to opt out of the regular money-making system. So most of them don't have money. But again, something to think about. Then we start jumping into performance again, because what this is right now for the last 4 weeks, we'll do it again next week, then it'll be 4 full weeks, is trying to get stand-ups to not think about themselves just as, by the generic term, stand-up, but to subdivide it into categories. One of those categories being performer. That if you start thinking of yourself as a performer instead of just I'm a stand-up, you realize that stand-ups really can benefit from performance training. It makes them more interesting to watch. They get a second laugh track going because people are laughing at the way they perform, not just at the script. But most stand-ups don't think of themselves strictly as performers, so they have performer inhibitions. They haven't fracked or broken their way through all the social contract and social inhibitions that every person walks around with for the most part, unless they've already got rid of those through some type of psychosis and they're already a everyday performer. So comics get caught up with this idea of not wanting to be embarrassed, not wanting to be vulnerable, not show certain emotions. They don't look foolish and silly. And that restricts how they perform. So if you take acting, the first thing they do is go in and break away your social inhibitions. And stand-ups can benefit from that. So we did some of that this week. And we might do some of it more, so that you can get to your inner performer, free that person up, and then start to get creative. So you start being like, okay, I'll try this in 30 different ways or 30 different emotions. And you get creative with it, and you start to have a really good performance channel going on alongside to your script channel and your character channel and your communicator channel. So suddenly it's 4-cylinder comedy instead of 1-cylinder comedy. Then we jumped into our weekly group-based exercise, got into groups of 4. Again, everybody started working with each other, 3 directors and 1 performer. The director's giving feedback on performance tools, which are your voice for stand-ups, which is huge because all the comedy is primarily delivered through voice. And if you do any research on real voice actors and people who really break it down, there's some really cool stuff that they can explain to you about the way the stand-up voice works and comedy voice in general. And you typically find people who do really well in stand-up have interesting voices, and they use them in interesting ways. But all the tools, voice, face, hands, body, costuming, hair, objects that you use, any of that stuff that you can get laughs with that isn't the words themselves. Finally, we did our InstaFix 1 hour. Everybody became a director, and people got on stage and started trying to make their way through material. And I interrupt them as soon as I see them not performing, because this is all about performance right now. So if you say a few things and I see that there's no performance in that, you're just saying the words, and I usually stop them, point out where you could perform. Like one guy, Ajit did a thing about walking down 6th. He goes, so I was walking down 6th Street, and he just went on with the story. I'm like, well, people don't just walk down 6th Street. You're avoiding barkers yelling at you to come in and drink. You're stepping over homeless people. You're getting, hypodermics caught in your shoe. Like, that could be acted out in a very funny, interesting way. But instead of just saying it, if you start showing it, you can get a lot more laughs. Even within that, I was walking down 6th Street can suddenly become funny. So what we're trying to do when we're direct stand-up performances is first find anything that's not working. That's your first job as a director. You have to make sure that your actor isn't doing things that are interrupting the experience of the show. And we all have unconscious things we do. I worked with a guy once who, the whole time he talked, he kept his hand like this for no reason. It's just, it was comfortable to him. But it became so odd for him to do that the whole time. People just started watching his hand. So first of all, find any problems and help them get that out of the show, out of their performance. Second, the director should come up with new and creative ideas that the performer may not have thought of themselves. Because especially when you're looking outside at somebody performing, you can start to see variations that they haven't found yet and make those suggestions. Third, you want to locate and make note of the great stuff that they are doing so that you can reinforce it. This is my favorite part of directing, is when you see like a natural performer or somebody that's come up with something really cool and creative and they don't even realize it. And you're like, that right there, that's a piece of performance uranium. You got to hold on to that and amplify it and use it more. So you're always looking for the great stuff they do and trying to praise it and reinforce it. And finally, depending on what kind of feedback that they like, you can give them very specific, detailed, pico level performance feedback, like, hey, raise your eyebrow more on that, or slow that down just a little. And some people like that kind of micro level feedback. Other people want it more generally. It's like, hey, get some more energy in this. I'd say, add a little more excitement, and they can work better when you give them sort of macro feedback. So directing's super fun. That's one of my favorite things to do when I can get it built into what I'm doing with people. But again, it's a lot of work. Like, you have to really focus on people, and you have to think about what they're doing and give them really good feedback, because bad direction, is less than useless. So we had quite a few workshoppers go up. A lot of people did a lot of different things. Sometimes I would challenge them to do something new that they couldn't do. Then I would bring somebody up and say, you try it. Like, you take their script, and let's say you act it out. And sometimes that worked, and again, sometimes it doesn't. We're looking for people that are strong performers, or at least strongly interested in performing, so that they can then start the process of becoming strong performers. I also decided at some point to just start pulling up the milder stand-ups in the workshop, the ones who don't really act, they don't really amplify their performance. They may have good jokes, they may be likable, but they're just up there basically talking their way through the script. So I pulled a couple of those guys up, Eric and Ajit, and I'm like, hey, let's see if you can act. Let's throw some acting in there. And Tom did that too. Tom feels very restricted about being too corporate and too conservative, and he actually got into some emotions and showed some anger and irritation. So it's fun to add that in. I sometimes think of it as fracking, their performance, so that it really kind of changes the way that they think about it and the way they feel when they perform, and it opens up a lot of things. So there you go. Next week, we're working on how you perform your core stand-up persona, meaning when you're on stage and you're telling jokes, there is a person that you are performing with your voice, face, body, hands, attitude, all that kind of stuff, who's telling those jokes. And 80% of the time, you're that person. Sometimes 100% of the time. Some people do a lot more acting and it's less, but there's a core you that is driving your stand-up. And the questions become, is it interesting? Is it helping the script, or is it neutral and it's not helping the script, or is it even damaging the script? So we're going to work on core personas next week, which is one of those things, if you get it right, man, if people just like who you are when you deliver jokes, you're gold, because you can just use that over and over and over and over. I think Bill Burr's a good example of this. I think Brian Regan. I think even Maria Bamford, who does a lot of characters and things. There's so many comics that are just charismatic, interesting people, and that's what drives their comedy. And it works really well as podcast for podcast hosts too, because you don't really have to act. You're just you, but it's an interesting you, and the comedy is filtered through that. Last quick note: Saloon show got canceled because we didn't have any comics there by 6. We're going to switch it up again. I think we're going to maybe start doing where we have somebody come in to headline, and then the other comedians will support it up to the point where the person comes in and does a 30 or 45-minute set. So it might be interesting. We'll see where we go with it. There you go. That's week 35. Was it 35 or 36? 35. And no mosquitoes. I'm going to start to bring mosquito repellent to the workshop in case we have to be outside again, which won't last very long in Texas anyway. We'll melt out there fairly soon. So there you go. See you next week.